Hello and welcome to Prateek Chess Videos.
Hey just friends, today we are going to see a game between Karpov and Kasparov in the year 1985. This game was a brilliant game by Kasparov because of his amazing sense of initiative. During the game, Kasparov just outplayed Karpov positionally, for which he is known. Kasparov in this game demonstrated how he can also play not only in attacking but also grab the initiative in positional situations and positionally outplay the opponent. This game was just an amazing game. So let's start. The game started with e4, c5, knight f3, and now e6. The Taimanov defense for uh, black, because now in the Sicilian here this Taimanov variation is known, not so it's not so popular, but still it's a known variation. Here idea of e6, here is to here after d4 to play c into d4, knight into d4, and now here comes knight. There is knight to c6. So here after knight to c6, um, uh, there is this move, knight to c6. Actually, the idea of knight to c6 is pretty simple. Black wants to play knight to f6, then bishop to b4, queen to c7, and in this type of game, we don't play like short castle, long castle, double side attack. We play positionally. Sometimes bishop c5, a6, bishop a7. There is also a6, which is growing more popular every day, which is growing more popular now, is more popular than knight c6. This is the Khan variation, and here black has this type of setup of knight c6, bishop c5, bishop a7. Then sometimes the knight develops to g7, sometimes f6, but the queen goes to c7, and then short castle, and then we plan d5. So this is kind of the setup of the Khan variation. Uh, this is quite a complex and good variation for black to play. Although in the game knight c6 was played, the Taimanov variation, knight c6 is still more popular because it has more options. But still a6 is more popular than knight c6. But knight c6 was played in the game. This is like the old variation which everyone used to play, and still it is employed. Uh, Now what's played? Knight to b5. Well, knight to b5, it is the Zen variation of Taimano. This is also a playable variation. Now comes d6, because this hole in here can only be filled by d6. c4, knight to f6, knight 1 c3, a6, knight to a3. This position is very well known, and now there's bishop e7. There's also b6 move. There's just two moves. So now what should we play? So after knight a3, there is this move. Bishop. There's bishop to e7, There's b6, the many moves here, but in the game was played d5. Okay, so d5 is a type of a nice move to play. d5 is the, let's say, Gary Gambit. This move questionable move is known as the Gary Gambit. We sacrifice a pawn here, and now e into d5 or c into d5, depends. In the game, c into d5. So this move was by him named after him because this game marked this move, and this amazing game was played by this move, and so the name Gary Gambit came. See, before it there was no one who played this move until this game. So now c into d5, e into d5, e into d5, knight to b4, attacking the d5, and now bishop to e2. And now most people here take on knight f into d5, and this position is here somewhat little bit better, slightly better for white. But here Kasparov simply played bishop to c5, and now there's a story here. So here it goes like in the before the game, Karpov's second had prepared this line, and here had the refutation of bishop e3. This is the refutation, and then after takes, queen a4 check, knight to d7, queen to b4. This is the type of refutation here. So here he prepared this line for Karpov, but forgot to tell Karpov before the game, and so this game happened. Bishop to c5. Yeah, this game, and it was very bad for not telling this, because uh, this is so much at stake. It is the world championship, 16th game. Last games are very important, and this game was the game which helped Kasparov earn a good advantage in the match, both on the score and also psychologically. Because this was a huge psychological blow to Team Karpov, because it was such a bad loss for Karpov. So now bishop e3 was not played in the game, but was played short castle. And now slowly this is starting making sense for black, this variation. And after short castle was played bishop to f3 in an attempt to defend the d5 pawn. Now you cannot capture the pawn, but now comes bishop to f5. Now bishop to f5 with the idea of knight to d3 can come, bishop to d3 can come. But now bishop to g5 was played. And now pause the video and think what will you play. Okay, now most people here, I am saying most people who don't have an understanding of chess, like those players would play here knight to d3 with the idea of knight into b2, and also the knight gets into the center. But now comes knight to c4, defending everything, and now it's really hard for black to progress. Like if you play b5, seems very logical, but now comes bishop to knight to e3. Unpleasant surprise here. f5 bishop is hanging. You have to take. takes, and if you now play knight into b2, then after queen here to d4, this position is completely like losing for white completely losing, because now black, because after h6 there's just this move d6, h into g5, and now bishop into a8, and to d6, if you don't if you move on c8, like I take here queen into f6, queen, and not even takes knight d5. And now problem is that you have to take on d4, because if you take on d6 then comes queen into b2, and if you take on d4 then comes knight e7 check, king to h8 or h7, and now e into d4, and now you lose this or this, and plus I have this solid pass pawn on d6, and you have no pawns in exchange, so I am totally winning. So here after d6, so here after uh, bishop g5, now knight d3 isn't that good. So now what should you play? What about b5? Whoops, but it runs into bishop e4. Nasty idea. This win makes it really hard for life really hard for black. Knight e4 can come, bishop e4 can come. So that's why sometimes you don't need to overly complicate a nice position. Sometimes you can just play waiting moves like rook to e8. Good move. Now rook to e8 idea is just waiting and improving the position. We take the e line, no bishop e4 threats, and the next move here is coming b5. Yes sir, b5, limiting these two knights. It's coming b5. So that's why now white should take action fast by playing knight to c4. That's the only move. But in the game was played queen to d2, and this was a bad move. Queen to d2, this was a bad move. I mean, little bit, but still now after b5 the life of white is really uncomfortable. So queen d2 is a bit dubious. So now knight c4 should have been played, knight d3. There's also b5, knight into b2. So now the queen d2 was played, and now b5. Now these two are limited, and now it's really complicated what to play. I mean, there's nothing here, because if you play like h3 is not h3 doesn't seem good. There's nothing really good here. But now rook a d1 was played, and now that runs into knight d3. Okay, additional problems. And now after knight to d3, here is the idea of b4, winning one of the two knights. So now after knight to d3 was here, after played knight a to b1, such a bad move, because now knight a to b1 here, after knight a to b1 is the idea that we are not losing one of the knights after playing b4, because b4 can't be stopped. Only way is to move one of the knights back, and knight a b1 was played. So now h6, attacking the bishop more, and now this was already a very bad position, because here actually the move that should have been played was d6. Knight a b1 was a mistake. d6 should have been played here. And after d6, queen into d6, exchange sacrifice. And now after bishop into a8, rook into e8, we absolutely have no pawns for the exchange, but still after takes knight c2, knight into b2, now we have one pawn. Knight d5, queen d8, we are somehow little bit better, because here see the rook needs to be moved, and if you play rook b1 then knight c4, rook to e1 also runs into knight c4, so you need to actually give up an exchange. So here knight c3, knight into d1, knight into f5, knight into f2, rook into f2, bishop into f2 check, king into f2. And here we reach this complicated position after king to h8, where black is a little bit better because of their 1 point advantage. But d6 was the best here white could do, but knight a b1 was played, and after h6, bishop h4, came the move b4. Here after b4 with the idea, b4 has the idea here of one idea is to just play bishop and b into c3. Another idea here actually black's plan here also is to restrict the knight on b1. Now the knight on b1 cannot go to c3 anytime after knight e2 c3. So after b4, here knight to e2 should have been played, but knight to e4 was played. Actually knight to e2 was better, and here after queen to b6 came knight should have played knight c1, knight e5, and still black is significantly better, but this is better than knight a4. And now bishop to d6 here, and now bishop to g3. And after bishop to g3, black plays another dominating move, rook to c8. And now we control the c file also, so that there's no queen c2 kind of moves, and now we are totally dominating the position. Now takes queen into d6, and now here it is totally lost actually. But still Karpov was trying here, but now b3 was played here, trying to make something with queen b2 or knight to b2 was the idea to exchange. But now came an unpleasant surprise. Now pause the video and think what should be the move. And now it came g5. Good move. Now the idea of g5 move is to play g4, and after g4 here the bishop is suddenly trapped, because if you here click on thread, actually it's not trapping the bishop, it's playing like securing the bishop somewhere, playing a5, then we secure the bishop, and then we play knight to e4, the decisive plan, our decisive plan. So g5, now after g5, in the game was played bishop into d6, queen into d6. Now here the threat is to play knight f4. Then if white doesn't disturb here with g3, then we can also play take on d5 sometime with rook e5 or rook d8, and we can also continue our attack with g4, knight e4, and that. So after bishop into d6, queen into d6 was played g3. Firstly here, idea here is that to prevent this knight f4, but now was played knight to d7. Knight to d7 has the idea of knight d to e5. So the thing is like knight d to e5 is coming, and now when the b2 knight is exchanged, then the other knight can replace it spot on d3. So that's why knight d7, and also the knight is brought on a better square. And thirdly, here the queen is also now portable, so we can get the queen wherever we want. So those are the three reasons. And also after knight d7, here there's also g4 coming, because this h6 square is guarded, and knight e5 is the biggest threat here. So okay, knight d7, bishop g2 was played, and after bishop g2 was played, queen f6. Queen f6, here idea of queen f6 is to restrict knight to b2. So now knight to b2 is not possible, and black is restricting every white move, and now white now doesn't have options. Now white should play a3, trying to take this pawn and end this suffering of the knight on b1. White is trying to develop the two knights, but still comes the nice move a5, and now it's just protects everything, and now b4 is protected, and now still the knight can't get out. So here after a into b4, a into b2, queen a2 was played with an attempt to play knight d2, knight c4, and then knight e3 some time, or knight b6 to just do anything in this seriously lost position. But now after queen e2 came this move bishop to g6. Bishop to g6 as the idea of h5 and g4, h5, h4, and so on, means just attacking here. So after bishop to g6, here was played d6, d6 with an attempt here of queen into d6, knight d2, and then knight to c, and then knight to c4. So here an attempt of knight d2, knight c4 is trying to get, but after d6, Kasparov just played g4, and now after g4, it's very hopeless again, because now it's really bad for situation for white. So now queen d2 was played, uh, attacking on h6. Oops, attacking on h6. Just king g7. f3 was played, trying to get something with f into g4, or get something with the f line, but just queen into d6, f into g4, and now queen to d4 check. King h1 was played, but now comes knight to f6. Here knight to f6 with the idea of knight into g4, knight f2. So now rook to f4. Here with the tactic of knight into f4, queen into d4. But still here, after rook to f4 was played knight to e4, keeping up the advantage, and now here knight into d2 is coming, knight to f2 is also coming. See, knight f2 is just uh, a big threat now, but now was played queen into d3, and now came knight f2 check, and now white loses its queen, because if you here play king to g1, then comes knight to h3 double check, king to h1, And now queen into d3. And then if you play rook into d3, then just a simple rook e1 check, bishop to f1, knight into f4, and now we lose white loses big amounts of material after king g1, bishop into d3, and now it's just lost. So that's why here queen d3, knight f2, rook into f2, bishop into d3, and now rook fd2 was played, queen to e3. Now queen to e3 with the idea of bishop into b1 and then queen into d2. Rook into d3 happened, and now rook to c1. Rook to c1, here the idea of rook to c1 is just to play queen into d3. And even worse, the idea is queen f2, then rook e1. And if you play rook into e3, then just rook into d1 check, bishop to f1, rook into e3, and now you lose one piece, king g1, and now rook into b3, this knight is completely trapped, so that's why b5 here, and we have a strong pass pawn, two rooks versus two minor pieces, so this is totally winning. So now knight to b2 was played, rook into e3 is the idea because knight supports the rook, but now queen to f2 just, rook e1 check is the ultimate idea. Now knight to d2 was played, if rook into c1 then rook e1 check, rook into e1, queen into e1 check, bishop to f1, and then queen into f1 is made. So that's why here rook into e3, sorry, that's why here knight to b2 was played, but now after queen f2, knight d2 was played. But now simple here rook into d1 check, knight into d1, and then rook to e1 check. And now white finally designed because now after knight to f1, rook into f1 check, bishop into f1, queen into f1 is checkmate. So that's why after knight d2, rook into d1 takes, rook e1 check, white resigned. An amazing game by Gary Kasparov, because he demonstrated how outplaying should can be done, and he started with an interesting pawn sacrifice in the opening, and then building his initiative in the middle game, and then just finishing in style here. So an amazing game by Kasparov. Okay, I hope you like this video and don't forget to click the subscribe button and the bell icon. Thank you.